Hey everyone, and welcome to our deep dive into the world of shared autonomous vehicles. You know, those driverless pods everyone's talking about.
Like minibuses from the future.
Exactly, like right out of a sci-fi movie. And we've got a ton of research papers and reports, even some feedback from peer reviews you wanted us to look at.
Yeah, it's quite the stack.
It is. So the big question is, will SAVs actually, live up to the hype and change how we all get around?
Yeah, will they actually deliver, you know?
Right. So we're going beyond the flashy headlines and digging into what's really going on.
And I think what's interesting here is that we're not just looking at the tech itself, but we're looking at, real world trials, and we're trying to figure out what people really think about sharing a ride with strangers in a driverless vehicle.
Okay, so let's jump into those early
Mm.
trials, right? Get down to the nitty gritty.
Let's do it.
One that really caught my eye was in Ski, Norway, run by Ruter,
Okay.
and they used a Toyota ProAce van, tricked out with all the self-driving tech, of course. But here's the thing: the report said it averaged 12 kilometers per hour.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's slower than a bike.
That is slower than a bike.
What gives? Yeah, well, it seems counterintuitive, right? We imagine these autonomous vehicles zipping around. But I think what this trial reveals is how complex those real-world environments really are,
Yeah.
Think about it, pedestrians, cyclists, even dogs, popping out unexpectedly.
Yeah, everyday stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Everyday stuff. And these vehicles are programmed to prioritize safety above all else.
So it's less about the tech's actual capability and more about making sure it's super cautious.
Exactly. And the report showed this trial had lots of what they call manual takeovers, which means a human driver had to step in and take control.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And this happened a lot at intersections and in situations where the system wasn't quite sure how to handle things.
So not exactly the smooth hands-free experience we see in those commercials.
Not yet, at least. And I think that, this is why these early trials are so crucial. They highlight the gap between the tech's potential and the messy reality of our streets.
Right. It's one thing to test it in a lab and then another to actually put it out there.
Exactly. And it's not just about the vehicles themselves. It's about public perception. Are people actually ready to embrace SAVs?
Right. And speaking of public perception, there's a whole stack of research on that too.
Oh, yeah, tons.
We've got these models with really complicated names like U2U and Mavier.
Yeah.
They're trying to predict who will actually use SAVs, like what kind of person is going to be an early adopter.
So think of these models as like trying to measure how likely you are to adopt any new technology.
Okay.
So Utah, for example, looks at things like, do you think the technology will be easy to use? Will it actually benefit you? And if the people around you are using it too.
So if your friends think SAVs are cool, you're more likely to give it a shot.
Yeah, exactly. That's the idea.
That makes sense. Peer pressure.
Peer pressure for SAVs.
But are these models actually accurate? Do they actually hold up in the real world?
Yeah. Here's where it gets interesting. The research suggests that all those different factors might actually boil down to a single general acceptance factor.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it's all about trust.
Right.
Do you trust the technology, and are you generally optimistic about tech advancements?
So someone who's comfortable with, things like smartphones and online shopping, they might be more open to hopping in a driverless vehicle.
Yeah, exactly. They're already used to putting their faith in technology.
That makes sense. They're already there.
Yeah,
Did any of the research look at whether age or gender makes a difference?
absolutely.
Yeah.
And unsurprisingly, young men are the most enthusiastic about SAVs.
Really? No surprise there.
Not really.
Yeah.
No, they tend to be early adopters of new technology, and they tend to have higher levels of trust in those autonomous systems.
So that stereotype about tech-savvy guys holds true even for self-driving cars.
It seems so, but on the flip side, older people and women tend to be more cautious.
Makes sense.
Again, it might come down to trust and familiarity with the technology.
Right. If you're not used to using tech all the time, it's a bigger leap.
Exactly. And this actually leads nicely into one of the most fascinating aspects of SAVs, the fact that you're sharing a small space with people you don't know.
Right. It's not like hopping in your own autonomous car. It's like a tiny self-driving party bus.
That's a great way to put it.
What does the research say about people's comfort levels with that? I mean, not everyone loves making small talk with strangers.
That's a great point. And the research actually digs into this. While most people don't mind sharing a significant chunk, about a third are really uncomfortable with the idea.
A third? Wow, that's a lot of potential riders who might be hesitant. What are their main concerns?
Well, some worry about safety, of course.
Sure.
Others are concerned about privacy, being in such a confined space.
Yeah.
And some even brought up the potential for discrimination within SAVs, which raises a whole other set of complex issues.
That's a really important point. A shared space like that could definitely bring those issues to the forefront.
Definitely something to consider.
But before we dive into all that, I think we need to step back and look at what people actually want from SAVs.
Yeah, what are their expectations?
What are the practical things they care about?
Yeah, the must-haves.
Yeah.
Well, one of the studies we looked at used open-ended surveys where people could just, say what was on their minds.
Okay.
And the biggest theme that emerged was availability.
Okay.
People want to know that the service is convenient and easy to use. Like, can I actually get an SAV when and where I need it?
It's like that whole you can't get a cab in the rain problem, but for the future.
Exactly. Reliability and convenience are huge.
Yeah.
No one wants to be left stranded, especially if they're relying on this new tech.
Mm.
Another big one is efficiency. Will using an SAV actually save me time compared to other options?
Right. Will it actually be faster?
Or will I be stuck on a slow, meandering route with a bunch of other passengers? People want to know it's a time saver, not a time waster.
Makes sense. We're all so busy these days. Time is precious.
Exactly. And of course, there's the cost factor too. No matter how futuristic the tech is, people are always going to be price conscious.
Absolutely. Cost is a major consideration for any form of transportation.
For sure. So, we've got all these factors at play. The tech itself, people's perceptions, and the practicalities of using SAVs in everyday life.
So given all that, do you think SAVs are actually going to live up to all the hype? Are we on the verge of a transportation revolution, or is this more of a slow evolution?
I think the research suggests that public perception is heavily influenced by these early trials. Those initial experiences, like the one in Norway, will shape people's opinions.
It's like a first impression, right? If those early trials are bumpy, it's going to be hard to win people over.
Exactly. And that's why transparency from those transport agencies is so important. They need to be honest about the challenges and limitations, not just focus on selling the dream.
No more smoke and mirrors, just real talk about where the tech is at.
Right. And ultimately, it all comes down to building trust. People need to feel confident that these vehicles are safe, reliable, and efficient. And it's not just about the tech itself. It's about creating a whole ecosystem around it.
Okay, so we've covered a lot of ground here at early trials.
Yeah.
What makes people want to use SAVs, even touched on some of the social dynamics. But now I want to flip the script and put you in the driver's seat, so to speak.
Okay, I like it.
If you were designing an SAV service,
Okay.
what features would you focus on based on everything we've learned? What would make you feel good about using one?
So assuming the basics are covered, like safety and reliability are a given, what are the extras that would really elevate the SAV experience?
Yeah, what would make people actually choose an SAV, over all the other options?
Exactly. And the research does mention a few things. Comfort is a big one, especially when you're sharing a ride.
Right, makes sense.
So things like, personalized climate control, adjustable lighting, even noise cancellation features could make a big difference.
Yeah, no more fighting over the AC. I like it.
You
Great.
create your own little oasis in there. And what about entertainment?
Mm-hmm.
Could we have personalized screens or even like a mini cinema setup?
Oh, like a mini movie theater in the SAV. That's interesting.
Yeah. Why not make it an enjoyable experience? And I think that actually speaks to addressing some of those social concerns we talked about.
Yeah, how do you make people actually feel safe and comfortable sharing a ride with strangers?
Right. That's the big question. It's a tough one.
Yeah, it's a balance between providing information and protecting people's privacy. You don't want it to feel creepy.
Exactly. One idea is to offer riders real-time but anonymized information about their fellow passengers.
Oh, okay.
So maybe something like the average age of passengers in this SAV is 35, or most riders in this SAV are commuting to work.
Okay.
Just enough to create a sense of familiarity without revealing personal details.
I see. So it's like knowing you're in a group of people with similar routines, but without knowing exactly who they are. I could see how that would help.
Okay.
What about a rating system like they have for ride-sharing apps that could build accountability and help people feel safer?
That's an excellent point. A rating system could really help foster a sense of community and trust among those riders. And I think on the design side, maybe you could incorporate physical elements that create personal space within the vehicle.
Okay, interesting.
Things like strategically placed dividers or adjustable seating, so people can create a bit of distance if they want.
Oh, I like that it's like customizable privacy within a shared space.
Exactly. Give people some control.
But what about safety concerns, specifically for women traveling alone? That was something that came up in the research.
Yes, and it's a crucial consideration. Some ideas being explored include, a verified background check designation that riders could opt for.
Okay.
That way everyone knows they're sharing a ride with someone who's been vetted.
I see. So it's about creating layers of like trust and security within the system.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Multiple layers to make people feel comfortable.
Okay, so we're talking about a lot more than just like cool tech here. We're talking about designing a service that's socially aware too.
Precisely. And I think we can't forget about accessibility. You know,
Of course.
SAVs need to be designed to work for everyone. People with disabilities, older adults, anyone with mobility challenges.
Absolutely.
We're talking ramps, adjustable seating, clear signage, the whole 9 yards.
Yes. Universal design is so important. SAVs shouldn't just be for like a select few. They should be for everyone.
Exactly, for everyone.
But thinking even bigger, what about integrating SAVs with existing public transportation?
Oh, yeah.
Could they become part of a larger network?
Absolutely. Imagine booking a trip that seamlessly combines a train ride with an SAV picking you up at the station and taking you to your final destination.
Oh, wow. So it's like the SAV becomes the last mile solution.
Exactly. That kind of integration would make public transportation so much more convenient and appealing.
Now, that's what I call door-to-door service, but that would require a lot of collaboration between like those transport agencies and the tech companies developing the SAVs.
Right? It would be a huge undertaking, but I
Yeah.
think that's what it takes to create
Hmm.
real innovation.
Yeah.
It's not just about those individual vehicles. It's about creating a truly interconnected transportation ecosystem.
So we've gone from like slow driving vans in Norway to imagining this whole network of SAVs zipping around, picking people up and dropping them off, working together with trains and buses. It's a pretty exciting vision.
It is, and I think it's important to remember that, we've also touched on some of those ethical and social challenges that need to be addressed.
Right.
Privacy, discrimination, accessibility, these are all things we need to consider very carefully as we design this future.
Right. It's not just about like the wow factor of the tech. It's about making sure it serves everyone equitably.
Exactly.
But let's be real, SAVs are still pretty new.
Oh, yeah.
We've got a long way to go before any of this becomes mainstream.
That's true.
Mm-hmm.
But what's exciting is that, the research gives us a roadmap.
Okay.
We're starting to understand what people want, what their concerns are, and how we can design a system that works for everyone.
Yeah, it feels like we've only just scratched the surface,
Yeah.
This is one of those topics where the more you learn, the more questions you have.
Absolutely. It's fascinating.
So as we wrap up, I want to leave you with something to think about. Let's fast forward 5 years. Imagine SAVs are everywhere now, not just a pilot project. What does that world actually look like?
I like it.
Did it actually solve traffic problems or did it make things worse,
That is the million-dollar question.
Mm.
Did we create a transportation system that's convenient and accessible for everyone, or did we just shift the inequalities around?
How did it change our cities? Were streets quieter? Do people even own cars anymore?
Yeah, are we all just zipping around in these little pods?
It's really interesting to think about.
It really is. And these are the questions I think we need to keep asking as SAVs, become more and more common. The choices we make today will really shape what that future looks like.
It's exciting and a little bit daunting at the same time,
Yeah, there's so much potential, but also so much responsibility.
But that's why these deep dives are so important. We get to explore these big questions together, armed with the best information available.
Exactly. It's about having those informed conversations.
So to our listeners out there, we encourage you to read those research papers yourself, dive into those peer reviews, and most importantly, come to your own conclusions.
Yeah, do your own deep dive.
What would your ideal SAV service look like? What features would make you feel safe, comfortable, and excited to hop on board?
Let us know. We might even feature your ideas in a future episode.
Until then, happy exploring.